Hello there, dear watchers, listeners, loyal supporters, and welcome back to GSL English. But not only welcome back to GSL English, welcome back to the podcast. Now, the GSL English podcast is a place where we just take a relaxed moment to just chat together and hopefully come away knowing a little bit more about the English language, coming away with some new vocabulary, and basically just listening to a random British guy natter on about absolutely anything in English. So that is what we're going to do today. So I do encourage grabbing a cup of tea, coffee, hot chocolate. It is getting to that time of year, the hot chocolate time of year. Maybe some marshmallows on top if you're feeling fancy. But I do encourage that. That is the idea of this podcast. If you are listening, as always, I respect your commitment to traditional forms of media. If you are listening to this podcast, maybe on Spotify, Apple, or on my Patreon account, hello. Thank you for listening. And if you are watching, I give you a wave, a salute. Hello, how are you doing to everybody on YouTube? As I said last time, this is all new to me. This social media, no, because I've been on Instagram for a while now. Can follow me at GSL English. Shameless plug. But YouTube is new to me. It's something that I recently started. I am enjoying it. I'm trying to build it up. So, yeah, bear with me. And the idea that I want with these podcasts is just to keep it really relaxed. We're going to talk about random things together, just so you can hear basically someone blabber on in real English. So try and listen to pronunciation as I go through. I'm going to try and introduce some new words to you, some new idioms. Going to answer some of your questions that were presented to me on Instagram, which is what we're going to do first. I'm going to natter about some things that have been on my mind over the last week. Going to give you some advice on where to visit in London. And then we're going to look at a fantastic article from Cambridge English about listening. So at the start here, I've got all of my notes here ready, but I have no idea how long this episode is going to be. My aim is to release these every Sunday. So if this gets enough likes, I will do that. 10 o'clock every Sunday, the GSL English podcast is available on YouTube. So please give this a thumbs up, give this a comment, share it with all your friends and family so we can get as many people watching and listening to this podcast as possible. So let's get straight into it. As I said, the first thing we are going to do today is answer some of your questions. So I put a little poll out on my Instagram recently asking what questions would you like me to answer on said podcast. Had a lot of questions, so I've chosen three questions that I thought were good. Now, the first question was a really interesting one because it wasn't necessarily focused on English. Now, I forgot to write down who asked me this question, but if you are listening and you know who you are, thank you for the great question. It was this: can you recommend any good book to help my way of thinking in life and work? Really interesting question. Can you recommend any good book to help my way of thinking in life and work? I had a hard think about this because I haven't really read a lot of these type of books, whether you want to class them as self-help books or just informative books or literature. But one book I have read that was recommended to me, and I really did enjoy it, was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it's available on Amazon. So if you just type that in, it will come on. If you want it in actual book format, then of course, but I'm pretty sure you could also download it on your phone or tablet. What I like about this book is, of course, it's talking about success, being effective, but not in a dogmatic way. It just presents it in a really real, understanding way about how we can be effective in life and 7 habits that maybe we can follow. And one of the interesting points is sometimes that the first thing we need to do is change our thinking over anything else. So it presents that in a really interesting way. There's pictures, diagrams in the book, which always help me because I have the attention span of a fish, which is something you'll notice as we go through, get to know me on these podcasts. Sometimes my mind just goes from point to point, but go with it. Just roll with it. Let's go on this cruise of exploration together into the way my mind works. So yeah, you will notice that about me. I jump across from point to point, but you'll get used to it. You get the drift. So that's the book I would recommend. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Okay, question number 2. Again, I decided not to write down who sent me this question, so I'm sorry about that. But if you did, if you were the one that asked me this question, please, and you are listening, say hello in the comments because it was a great question. Any tips on how to articulate or to speak out loud my thoughts into words? Any tips on how to articulate my thoughts into words? And I thought this was, again, a really interesting question because this to me is the definition of why we learn a language. It is articulation, isn't it? That is what we're trying to do. We are trying to express our thoughts and opinions clearly. Okay, we might be trying to pass an exam. There might be other personal reasons, but even in our native language, isn't that something that we always want to do? We want to be able to express our thoughts and opinions clearly. The first tip I have with this, and of course these are just my tips, but I do believe they work, is to not overthink. And I know that can be quite a frustrating answer. You might think, well, everyone says that, don't overthink. But what I mean by that is sometimes we worry so much on expressing our thoughts clearly, perfectly, fluently, with perfect pronunciation that we get lost. It's like they get churned around in our brain and then it doesn't come out. But if you think of when we express ourselves in our native language, it isn't always perfect. We don't take a lot of time to think, we just speak. That is what we want. And if we are articulating our thoughts naturally and clearly, it won't always be as fluent as you think. That is okay, but don't overthink. Just let it come out naturally. That is the first tip I would have. I hope that makes sense. The second tip is this: improve your vocabulary and learn some new expressions, idioms, phrasal verbs. We can only work with what we've got. So, okay, we try not to overthink, but the more vocabulary we have in our toolbox, so to speak, the more we are able to express ourselves. It's like if we are going to do some construction, the more tools we have, the easier that job is. We can't just do it with a hammer and a screwdriver. We need more. It's the same principle. The more vocabulary we have at the ready, the more idioms, the more expressions we have, the easier it is. We have more tools, so to speak, to express ourselves with. So that is the next tip, really focus on learning new vocabulary, new expressions. That doesn't mean writing down 100 words a day at all. That is not what that means. But when we're trying to express our thoughts clearly, trying to put across our opinion, you want to have that vocabulary ready. You want to have those expressions ready. So that is what I would recommend. Don't write down 50 to 100 words every day. Maybe just take one thought that you want to express and then look at some new ways you could do that. Look at some new vocabulary. Look at some new expressions that would help you to articulate that thought clearly. So yeah, I rambled on a bit there, but don't overthink and improve your vocabulary arsenal, so to speak. Very good. Okay, now the third and last question that you presented to me on Instagram was how to pronounce this word. Okay, how to pronounce this word, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. That silent B in the middle can really throw us off. Undoubtedly. Doubt, just remove the B. It's not there. Idly. Undoubtedly. I undoubtedly know you have subscribed to my YouTube channel. Oh, I'm ashamed of that. That was a really shameless plug, wasn't it? But yeah, I undoubtedly know that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, there you go. All right, question time is over. Done. We've gone with the questions. No more. If you do want me to answer any questions next week, let me know in the comments, message me on Instagram, and I will choose some questions that I feel appropriate to answer. Okay, it's now time for the Word of the Day segment. I feel like there should be some music there for the Word of the Day, like a little intro to Word of the Day, kind of like the beginning of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Word of the Day. Doodle-doodle-dum. Or maybe something more upbeat. Got any options, let me know. The word of the day is to gallivant or gallivanting. To gallivant or gallivanting. I love this word. It means to visit or go to a lot of different places, enjoying yourself and not worrying about other things you should be doing. So when we gallivant, we're traveling around, we're visiting different places, and we're not worrying. We're enjoying the experience. An example sentence. Well, you won't be able to go off gallivanting around like this when there's a baby to be taken care of. Well, you won't be able to go off gallivanting around like this when there's a baby to be taken care of. Basically suggesting that, of course, a baby is a responsibility. But gallivanting, we are traveling around. We're not worrying about things that we should be doing. We're just enjoying the travel. I know my father always used to say to me, where are you gallivanting off to this weekend? It was never anywhere that interesting. He used to use that word. So that is the word of the week. To gallivant, gallivanting. Okay, done. Use it in a sentence below. Next portion of the podcast, the natter portion. Now, this is the section that I got the most comments on. So, we're just going to chat for a little bit. I'm going to express some things that have been on my mind. And the first one is this. Where on earth am I? A lot of people have said to me, what room are you in? Are you in a cabin in the woods? No, I'm not. It's not as exciting and romantic as that. I am in a cabin in my parents' garden currently. So just a little history of this room. My parents moved to a house outside of London when I was about 15, and it had this little cabin outside. When we first came here, when I was 15, we used this, me and my friends, we used this room as like a music room. I played drums, friends played guitar, and we just kind of jammed most evenings. Very fortunate to have it. And that is what this room was. It was a music room. It then converted into a gym for a while, which it still kind of is over here. I'm not going to show you because it's an absolute tip. Tip meaning a mess. Gym. Then I moved out. Traveled the world a bit. Cutting a really long story short, recently tried moving to Italy. That didn't work out, unfortunately, for different reasons. Particularly one being the visa, quite difficult to get. So at the moment, currently, we're back in England at my parents' house, and I'm back in the original office. I like to call it the den. Actually, I think most people call it a den. That's not something that I just do. So that is where I am, just outside of London, in the southeast of England, a little village called Mepham, about 30 minutes from the centre of London, basically in my parents' garden. But I've tried to fancy it up a bit recently. I don't know if you've noticed. I've just realised that if you are listening to this, this probably isn't that great to listen to, but I'm going to try and explain it to you. As you can see on YouTube, I fancied it up with a light. I put these fancy lights up here. I did it all myself. I know. Got some guitars. I'm trying to make it look more presentable. I'm trying to make my content more professional. I think we're getting there, guys, with YouTube. It really is a learning curve with YouTube. Some videos do really well, others don't. So anytime you can support me or anytime you can support the content, I do appreciate it. And also, I got a new microphone. Took me a while, but I took the plunge. I got a new microphone. A lot of people asked me, because in my previous videos, I was holding that stupid little microphone. Because it's all I had. It was £10, that microphone. Did the job. But now I have upgraded to a much prettier and a much, I think, better sounding microphone. So there you go. That is where I am. In a cabin in my parents' garden. The next thing I wanted to rant about, really, this is a rant, is the weather currently in England. And I know that the stereotype in England is that it is always raining. And I never like to agree to that stereotype because I don't feel that it is. But this year has proved me wrong. If you have been in England at all, you'll know what I mean. It's just been really bad. Summer, in my experience, was pretty non-existent. We had some good days, but we didn't have, long periods of sun. It just rained so much. So my next rant is, come on, sort it out. This rain in England is getting ridiculous. What year was it? I think maybe 2022, we had a ridiculous summer. It was so unbelievably hot. I think we got to over 40 degrees Celsius, which for English people is, the temperature you cook a chicken at. So we were all very burnt as a nation throughout that time. But this summer, we were hoping for it. It didn't happen. It's been raining and it's still raining. Saying that, today's quite a nice day. You can see the sun coming through. Today is quite a nice day. But yeah, that was my next part of the rant. Sort it out. Summer's been non-existent. Not happy. Too much rain. Okay, the next part of the natter. I wanted to talk to you about somewhere I feel you should visit in London. And I did reference this in my previous speaking practice video, which you can find below. Somewhere I think you should all visit if you do go to London is Borough Market. Borough Market. It is absolutely superb. I'm just going to read you from the Borough Market website of what it is. Knowledge, commitment, and a love of good food. Our stalls, stands, shops, and restaurants are all completely distinctive, unique in the food they sell and in the people who sell it. Between them, they offer a dizzying diversity of British and international flavours. What all our traders have in common, though, is their level of knowledge and expertise, their commitment to doing things the right way, and the emphasis they place on making or sourcing the best food they possibly can. Yeah, it really is a great place. As soon as you kind of step into Borough Market, you just get this wave of smell, atmosphere, and flavour. It says that it is completely distinctive. Can't be mistaken. It's unique. One of a kind. They offer a dizzying diversity. Incredible diversity. And it is, you have Asian flavours, European smells, all combining together to create this kind of concoction of flavours and smells and atmosphere. So I would really recommend going to Borough Market. Absolutely fantastic place. If you do go, they also do, you can get a nice glass of wine there. You can just try little bits of food. I think it can be quite expensive, but it's well worth it. Very good. We are now going to read together an article from Cambridge English. It's a brilliant article. We're just going to read it, talk about it. I'll give you my opinion. It is fantastic. I've put the link below so you can read the article on your own in your spare time. How can I improve my listening? A lot of people ask me this because they say, well, I've learned to speak, but I really struggle listening. I really struggle understanding what people are saying, particularly when they're speaking fluently and at quite a pace. So this article helps us do that. A brief guide with tips for improving listening skills. So we have the introduction, listening in general, and listening in exams, which is an essential part. If we're going to do our IELTS exam, for example, we know there's a listening portion. So this is very important. Okay, introduction. This guide provides tips and general advice to help prepare for a Cambridge English qualification such as A2 Key or A2 Key for schools, B1 Preliminary or B1 Preliminary for schools, parents, students and teachers. This guide contains some practical steps to help improve listening skills and develop listening strategies for a listening test. So, again, if you're interested in any of those qualifications, go on the website. But I do feel that all of the principles and tips that they present are fantastic for all of us. So that's why we're going to look at it. So listening in general. And when they say listening in general, what they mean is, just general listening, not for any specific purpose, not for an exam or for a reason, but just listening in general. How can we improve it? Tip A, timetable, regular practice. For example, 15 minutes at lunch, 15 minutes before breakfast. Aim for a manageable amount of time which you can dedicate every day to listening to something in English. I couldn't agree more with this. Aim for a manageable amount of time. Now, what is manageable to us is different to the next person. So, if you're a busy person, there's no point saying, right, I'm going to sit down every day and listen for an hour. Because most likely that's not going to happen. Most likely that's not realistic. And to be honest, it's too long. So think to yourself, what is a manageable amount of time each day I could listen in English? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, 30? First of all, ask yourself, what is a manageable amount of time I could fit in each day? Once you have decided that time, schedule it in. Put it into your calendar. So maybe it's whilst you're eating breakfast, you have a podcast on like this or other YouTube channels, whatever it is, you listen. So listen carefully. Maybe it's in your lunch break. Maybe it's when you get home. Whatever it is, find a time that works for you for listening. It might even be that you have to kill two birds with one stone and do it whilst you're driving, on the train, exercising, whatever it is. Aim for a manageable amount of time each day. And you have to be honest with yourself. What is manageable to you? And, make it regular. Timetable it in, schedule it into your week. Tip B, expand your range. Everything helps, but you are more likely to be motivated when you are listening to something that interests you, something you enjoy. If you like watching films, then that's fine. But remember, in a test you won't see the person who is speaking, so it's also good practice to add non-interactive listening to your practice. Podcasts, radio stations, online, and international news websites often have short audio news items. Pick out stories that interest you. Yeah, so let's just at the outset, I do believe that watching films is a brilliant way of improving your listening skills. If you can do it without subtitles, fantastic. If not, try and work your way up to that. But also, there's many times that we're going to be listening that we don't have the subject in front of us. As it describes it here, it is non-interactive. We are simply listening. So find something like that you enjoy. Podcasts like this one. Radio stations, whatever it is. There's loads of English radio stations, news websites. You can listen to the news be read out. But I like this last point. Pick something that interests you. I say this time and time and again, and if you are a regular listener, you're going to know this, but if you are into cars, don't go listening to a podcast about something you have no interest in. So if you don't like baking, but you like cars, you wouldn't listen to a podcast in baking. Just pick stuff that interests you, not just because someone told you to or it's the one that's popular. Pick something to listen to that interests you. Why? Because you will actually listen. And you will find that rather than it becoming an exercise or a lesson, it just becomes enjoyable. And that is what we want it to become. We want to enjoy the process. So expand your range. Okay, you might listen to movies, films, fantastic. Chuck a TV series in there. Throw podcasts into your listening routine weekly. Radio stations. So on your scheduled time each week, maybe you can schedule what you're going to listen to rather than spending that time trying to find something. Scroll through Netflix or Spotify trying to find something to listen to. Already know what you are going to listen to. So we can include that in our timetable. But you have to pick something that interests you. It can't just be because somebody told you to do it, because you've got to make this enjoyable. You've got to do something that you enjoy. Okay, the next tip: practice in chunks. Targeted, focused practice can really help to stretch your ability to understand main context and can help you to learn new works and become familiar with grammar structures and accents. For example, listen to a 2-minute chunk of a podcast. Then check understanding and continue listening for the next 2 minutes, and so on. Try this 2 or 3 times and then relax and listen to the rest of the text. I like this. I do try and get a few of my students to do this, but let's imagine that you have a 10-minute window to practice your listening. Listen for 2, 3, or maybe 5 minutes. That is considered a chunk, an allotted time. Then from that 2 minutes, you check your listening. You check the grammar structures. You try and imitate pronunciation, intonation, modulation. So you take that 5 minutes and basically you zoom in. You try and get as much information as you can from that little chunk. So this process does take longer, but it is really effective. So, okay, we're going to find new vocabulary, but as you do this exercise, focus on the grammar that is used, the word structure, the intonation, the modulation, pace, pitch, and try and imitate it. Repeat that a few times and then just carry on listening. Great piece of advice there. Practice in chunks. Couldn't recommend more. And repeated practice is the next suggestion. The more you listen, the more you will hear. Go back to a text you have listened to before and practice listening for more ideas. If you are using a book to study, then these can be a great source for listening texts. Keep a record of new words and phrases you pick out. This will help your reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Couldn't agree more. Once again, repeat what you've already done. We don't always have to find new material, new podcasts, new texts. Try repeating what you've already done. Now, that might not be the next day, but the next week, the next month. Go back to something you've already studied. One, because we are familiar with it, so, we kind of know what to expect, so we can focus on different aspects of it. But also, it's a great indication of how we are improving. Because there might be something that we listened to a month ago that we didn't get a lot from. And then we go and listen to it again, and then we think, wow, I got so much more from that. Absolutely brilliant. Give it a try. Now, my neighbour, I don't know if you can hear that, has just started some work in their house. So if you can hear that in the background, I'm very sorry. If not, well done to my new Samsung mic. Absolutely brilliant. But there you go. Repeated practice. Go over what you already know. Okay, now, listening in exams. This is the one. Listening in exams. We'll kind of focus on the Cambridge or the IELTS exams. Before listening, read and listen to introductions. This will give you information such as how many questions you need to answer in this section. Underline key words in the questions, usually nouns and verbs. Understanding each context will help you better understand the answer options. Always read the question and think about the person talking. And if they are giving an opinion or expressing an attitude or a feeling, for example. Read and listen carefully to the example given at the start of each part. This will show you how to answer the questions. Can you predict any answers? Name, noun, number, place, actual answer. Very good advice. Read and listen to instructions. Underline key words in the questions. And then you can listen out for those words. Or it says here, nouns or verbs. But I do like this advice, just trying to get an understanding of the context before we are actually going to listen. best way to do it. So when you get your paper, analyze the questions, the words, predict answers, get an overview of what is going to be asked before the listening exercise actually begins. Then while listening, I love this point, don't worry if you don't understand everything. Understanding the main idea is usually enough. You hear the recording twice, so don't worry if you miss the answer the first time. Try to listen to the whole recording the first time to help you with the context. Then check your answers the second time. When you move to the next question, forget the previous ones. There's a few points in here I'd like to bring up. Don't worry if you don't understand everything. Just focus on those key words that you underlined. We just got to understand the main idea, the main principle, not every single word. Relax. You hear the recording twice. So maybe the first time we get certain questions. And the second time we get other questions. So, and the second point, try to listen to the whole recording the first time, then use the second time to check your answers. So, maybe we can do that. Try and get as much as we can the first time, then we use the second time to check the answers that we have. Thirdly, just on that last point, don't switch off on the second recording. If you think you have the answers, don't switch off. Check them. Analyze what you have done. And thirdly, when you move to the next, I don't know why I said thirdly, but lastly, when you move to the next question, forget the previous ones. This has happened to a few of my students where they're worried that they got the last question wrong. They get caught up on it and then they lose out on the next questions. We don't want to do this, okay? Once you've moved on to the next question, move on. Focus on that and forget the previous ones. After listening, don't leave empty spaces on your answer sheet. Check everything on your answer sheet. Don't leave empty spaces. Fill it in with something. Even if you think it might be wrong, an answer is better than no answer. Check over everything. Check all of your answers. Don't just feel that you might have it right and you don't need to. Check everything. Very good. So I hope you enjoyed that article. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It really is a brilliant article to study. So I've put the link below. Have a look through it. And, there's so many different ideas that we can take there. But the biggest thing I'd like to take from it is just find a way of studying that is manageable for you. Find a way of listening, writing, speaking. Find a way that, one, is manageable for you, but secondly, that you enjoy. We want this process to be fun. We don't want it to be boring. Very good. So that's all I've got for today. That is technically the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. As I say, the idea of these podcasts, I know I do a few scripted videos a week, but I just want to present English to you in a way that helps you to relax and just take in some form of English. We looked at some new words, idioms, but my idea is just that you can enjoy it. Eventually, once I've got a sofa, I'm going to sit back on the sofa and we're just going to relax together. So, yeah, listen to this podcast a few times. Kind of, if there's any new words that you might take from it, try using them over the next week. But also, please, if you did enjoy this, as I said, give it a thumbs up. But let me know in the comments, what do you want me to talk about? I'm doing this for you guys, so what would you like me to talk about? As I said before, I'm completely new to this YouTube podcast journey, and we're going on it together. So help me out. Anything you want me to talk about, any suggestions you've got, let me know. But thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate if you made it all the way through this episode. It does mean a lot to me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all very soon. Have a good one, guys.